Nobody wants to talk about incest. Nobody wants to address incest. But it's the biggest predator we have is in that home. Society just wants to kind of overlook that.
The higher levels still don't want to talk about this in legislature. We've had senators, governors, attorney generals who just don't want to talk to us.
Don't look for anyone else to solve it. We are the problem and we are the solution.
Dear Dad, I've come to you today to let you know that I've remembered that when I was a kid that you raped me. And he stopped and he went, raped you? Raped you? Sharon, I didn't rape you. I loved you. I loved you with everything that I had.
He was this huge, mean man, and he was right by my bed by me, and he sat there, and he just said, I love you, you know I love you, you know I love you, I love you, and I'm just like, I'm 8, scared to death.
Were there any other victims between your last one and those teenage years?
Years ago. Yes.
And how many victims were there besides those?
Well, at least 24.
And how many instances would you say that 24 represented?
At least 1,000 times.
He put his hands underneath the covers and started feeling me all over, and then started touching me and fingering me. And I'm like stiff as a board. And I mean, I'm sure that's when I really checked out. It continued on from age 6 to 15.
And these were all people that you knew?
Yes.
These weren't children that you saw in the playground and stalked. You knew these people?
I knew them.
And you knew their families?
Yes. Most of the time, it was relatives.
That was the beginning of just my complete going into the darkness, into the abyss.
I just want to give you a heads up here. What you're giving me is permission to show this film on TV. Essentially, that's what's going to take place. Hopefully, that's what's going to take place. Your faces are not going to be blacked out. You're going to be exposed. And what I'm asking you to do is to become advocates for children. I'm asking you to help us help kids not get offended again. I know that's a tall order, but that's what I'm asking you to do. And if we can save one child, you guys know what that means. If we can help someone not re-offend or not offend, you also know what that means because you've walked it, now you're going to be asked to talk it. So if that's not okay with you, if that is too much to ask of you, then you need to leave now. But if it is, then we will take this journey together.
Well, my name is Jeremy. I was convicted of lewd molestation Victim was 2.5. He was a French child.
What actually took place?
Well, at the time, I was doing drugs, and that's how it took place there.
What did you physically do?
Well, I basically stuck my penis in his ass. I just want to tell the truth about it all.
And was this the only person you offended with?
Yes, sir.
And how long did that go on?
Went on from December until June of 2003.
And were you a victim of molestation as a
Yes, I
child?
was. By my own father.
Anyone else?
No.
And how long did that go on for you?
Went on until I was about 16.5.
My name is Jerry. I raped my victims, molested and molested my victims. I knew them.
How many children would you estimate?
Over my entire life, I probably got 100, 150 victims.
And how did you get caught?
A couple of my victims turned me in.
Did you think at all about the possibility of being caught?
Not really, for the simple reason it was, when I was victimized, I couldn't talk about it. And I figured the same with my victims. They wouldn't talk about it.
So you were a victim,
Yeah,
and who victimized you?
my grandfather and an uncle.
And how long did that go on?
Approximately 3 to 4 years.
And you never spoke about it?
I did, but it got in trouble whenever I did.
Your mom didn't believe you?
No. We didn't talk about what had happened. You talked about it, you got a whipping. It's plain and simple. So,
Did you have any brothers or sisters?
yes,
And were they molested by your grandfather and your uncle too?
one older sister was. She was raped by my grandfather.
And how old were you when you started to victimize children?
I'm gonna say about 14, 15 years old.
When you molested the children you molested, was there any moment where you realized that you were going to cross the line?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. There was several times that I knew I'd done crossed it.
What drove you to cross that line?
On personal gratification.
Was there any kind of a feeling about it?
Sure, it's just like, it's just like anything that makes you feel good. It's things like that, like an instant high, an adrenaline rush. It's just everything rolled up into one.
If someone were to ask you, how can I protect my kids from someone like you, as you were, what would you advise them?
Listen to the kids. Listen to them. If they say someone's touched them, take their word for gold. Because it's probably the truth. With me, there was not a whole lot of people I could trust. And that's another issue, is you gotta trust someone. You gotta trust them.
I'm really curious as to why you would trust me.
Because the way you describe it is you're trying to help children from being victimized. And to me, that's worth more than anything in the world. So I'm gonna trust you.
Why you're in the suit now, right?
It's okay.
They're the people that goes to the restaurants and eat with us. There are Sunday school directors, there are police officers, there are judges.
I taught Sunday school, I attended church, I led singing in the church. All the while, I was molesting.
I worked for a year on the sexual trauma unit, and the majority of the perpetrators had something to do with some religious affiliation, whether they be preachers, youth leaders, whatever. I mean, that's where they got their victims from.
The people that we don't expect to be the offenders are the people who are the offending. That's what makes it so difficult for families.
People don't understand the dynamics of sexual offending, that it's not about sex. It's about the offender's need for gratification, for control, for power. That we look at that as, who would ever do that to a child? What's sexual about a child? And those are great questions to ask because people want to understand. They can't wrap their minds around it because it is such a horrific thing to wrap our minds around.
Sexual abuse of children is usually thought of as, I don't know, acting out some kind of overriding need for sex. And in fact, sex has less to do with the acting out of this than need to dominate, fears that they are unloved, and so they're going to give fake love to these little children that they're, and usually it's little children. You know, the average age of a child that's molested is 7. Good grief, that means half of them are under 7. These are little tiny children, these in America, and that their need to dominate, which essentially repeats the kind of domination that they had in their own childhood.
Initially, offenders will tell you that they did this out of love. But after working through that type of denial that they do have and coming up with, no, love and sex aren't the same thing. Love and sexual abuse isn't the same thing. If I loved my child, I would have protected them. And then they start realizing that this wasn't about love. This was about me using my child for sexual gratification, my own sexual gratification. That I am a really distorted person to ever believe that this was about love.
And they can be treated and they can be cured. They can be by psychoanalytic methods. Not too many people want to spend that time or the effort and so on. It's better just throw them in jail for, what do they get, 6 months or something, or 6 years even, but then they come out and they're exactly the same. In fact, they're worse. Because essentially the jail just repeats the kind of domination and sense of lack of self-worth that they had when they did the crime, and so they're more going to commit the crime again.
Anybody got a quarter? Quarter?
Thank you. You take care. These people, because of the certain crime that it is, people don't mind saying, I'll give you extra bucks for punishment, but when you tell them that let's not restrict where they're at, what they can do, let's just leave them out there and pay for programs, people, majority are going to say, no, let's not put them in front of somebody and try to rehabilitate them. Let's put them away for the rest of their lives.
You know, I'm interested in one thing, and that is finding a way for the kids to be as protected as possible. And if that would do that, then I'm in favor of it. But what I'm not in favor of is not doing that, but doing something else that lets the guys out and then creates a situation of such severe stress that they're likely to reoffend. That's what I'm against. So if you want, there's a guy in Oklahoma, congressman from Oklahoma,
who's proposing first offense, that's it, you're dead. Well, that will solve the problem. None of these guys who offend for the first time will offend for the second time. But of course, that doesn't take care of the first time.
They very rarely get caught the first time.
Right, I agree with that.
So, you know, if you're saying 3 offenses, you're probably dealing with 300 or 3,000.
And how many violations did you have before you got caught?
Hundreds.
When parents watch television, they see the less than 2% of the population that are publicized that have kidnapped, raped, killed, mutilated, tortured. And that, in their minds, then that is the person that they focus on, which leaves their child in danger, because their child could be being molested by the babysitter or the boy next door.
Like last night on the news, there was a guy come on there and he said, how could this have come to our neighborhood? It's already been in the neighborhood. There's nobody got caught.
Who do you know to trust? You know, honestly, who do you know to trust?
The first time that I met them was whenever I started dating my wife. She was my fiance at the time, and I didn't really care that much about the child or the children. After spending some time with them, I started becoming emotionally attached, and the emotional attachment became of sexual nature, becoming sexually aroused. And it went from there, it escalated to molesting.
When you say molesting, what exactly do you mean by that?
Fondling the genitals, while I was babysitting the child, laying down, helping him, try to get him to go to sleep, and then I would molest and orally sodomize.
And how old was he?
At the beginning, 4 years old.
And how long did that go on?
It went for 12 months. I had a lot of boldness about it as time went by. It became more evident.
Did the child ever mention anything to his mother?
Not for a while. It was like towards the end, about 11, 12 months after this whole thing started, that he started exhibiting the same behaviors that I was doing to him, he was starting to do to his younger brother. His mother found them in their room one day, and she asked him, how did he learn something like that? And that's whenever he mentioned me. And so that's how she found it.
And she then confronted you?
She, her husband, and the child came to my house and confronted me, asked me about it, and I told them. I told them exactly what happened.
Were you beat up?
No.
What did that man do?
Oh, he was so shocked. He said, the world is going crazy. What am I going to do? He said, you know, like the child had been victimized by someone else in the family, and he thought he had put a stop to it. And now he said, you're doing it. You know, it's just like he grabbed his son up and carried him out the door, and he was shaking and shivering all over and crying. And he said, what's all the animosity towards my son? And I said, I don't have any animosity toward him. He says, if that's so, why did you do that? You know, it's not out of respect that you do something like that. And as time went by and I had time to think about it while I was in prison, I thought about all the words that were said to me. It started making sense to me.
That's your avenue towards protecting children. That's a secondary factor. If your factor is protect the children, then do that.
Those that offend more, and they don't get helped, and I think we have big problems in this society, and I think this is not working.
English muffin? My personal opinion, they can't be rehabilitated because that's what they like. They
You
like
don't think people
that.
change their minds?
No.
You don't think someone can be on some level trained or readjusted to not go that direction if it's a deviant direction?
Not if they're a deviant themselves, because they'll always have deviants in them.
So, like an alcoholic, do you
Will
think
always
that they
drink.
will always drink? So you don't think AA works?
No. I think AA is too organized. And if they want to quit, they will quit. But if they need that kind of assistance, they will always want to go back to it, no matter what.
Well, it happened to me as a child.
Who was the person?
Actually, I knew every one of them. They were friends, like my friends' fathers. But I would just remember as a child, I pretended like it wasn't happening, it was just a dream. As far as the men, I never hated them. I never did hate them. I just knew that they had a problem. And I believe that it is a spirit, and there is a spirit behind it, I believe. You know, now we can give in, we all have choices to make. We can give in to the right spirit or the wrong spirit,
How old were you when these events
9, the first time.
And when did it end? And how old were you?
12, I think.
Yeah. And you told your mother about this?
No,
Never
no,
did.
because I thought it was my fault.
Oh.
I did. I guess I did. I must have. Plus, I knew him and I didn't want to hurt him. You know what I mean? I didn't want to, I guess that's the only thing I can figure out is that I just didn't want to hurt them and didn't want to see them go to jail or that kind of thing. I really believe that Jesus is their answer. I mean, for any of us that want to come out of anything, depression, oppression, bitterness, anger, because I had anger and even myself and God, because I called on him though, we have to call upon God and ask him, and he's there. He's there.
And who is this lovely woman next to you?
I'm Margaret Olson. Margaret Olson.
You're Margaret Olson.
Mhm.
Are you related?
No, she's my angel. My guardian angel. I've had a wonderful life, and I've never had any problems like this come up in my life. So I can't really, it's disgusting to think, it wasn't even talked about when I was a girl. I'm 89 years old, and nothing like this was even talked about, and I didn't even know what it was.
Nobody just comes right out and has a shirt on and says, I'm a pedophile.
My mom knew. I went and told her. She's sitting at the dining room table reading one of her books. Mom, I don't like Daddy hurting me. I don't like it. He hurts me. I kept getting vaginal infections. They kept taking me to the doctors. I wouldn't find out until I was in therapy that multiple vaginal infections are a major sign of incest.
I was molested by my cousin. I'm sleeping and all of a sudden I just feel this hand over me and I was like, when you're kind of like, you're waking up, but you're not really sure, like, is this really going on? And then like he starts putting his hand up my shirt and then down my pants, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm like, please just stop. I'm just thinking to myself, okay, if I just pretend like I'm asleep long enough, maybe it'll go away. Maybe he'll stop touching me. And I was like, at this point, I was so freaked out, and like he started putting his fingers inside me, and I just like pretended like I woke up, and he like pulled his hands away, and I was like, Dana, and I pulled open the window from the truck bed, and I was like, I have to go pee, I have to go pee. She goes, okay, Jocelyn. And so we pull over. And as I get out to go pee, I'm like, Deanna, I need to talk to you. She's like, what is it, Jocelyn? And I come out there and I told her that Daniel was touching me. And she goes, no, he's not. We just hit a bump. It's okay. Here, go ahead and put on this jacket and just go back there.
So I'd like to know why we don't believe our kids.
It's easier to deny that it's happened than it is to feel like you're responsible for bringing the person in that did it.
Family matters, particularly sexual matters in the family, are the hardest things in the world to admit and the hardest things to talk about.
In our society, sex is a hysterical issue, so there isn't a lot of maturity around the subject in the first place, which is part of why sex offenders are today's boogeymen, because the word sex is in there.
Oh, most incest, as you probably have found out, occurs by family members somehow, probably 60% or so, not strangers.
David Finkelhor is, I believe, the most noted researcher, and he's the one that came up with statistics such as 1 out of 3 females are molested in America before their 18th birthday.
The father is the most, the uncle, even the brother.
And I believe 1 out of 5 or 1 out of 6 boys. We're talking nationwide. That's a lot of people. So when you only identify a few thousand cases per county, you're missing probably 95% of it.
Careful studies, starting with Russell in San Francisco and another one a little later on, showed that 45% of the girls and 30% of the boys remembered sexual molestation. And by that I don't mean just only rape, but a lot of fondling and stuff like that, but not just little bitty stuff, real serious stuff. What? 45% of girls and 30% of, nobody could possibly, well, that's a well-known figure. Why isn't that publicized?
For a lot of people, that self-protection about not wanting to believe and not being able to believe is just that. It's self-protection. I can't allow that to open up into my world and to see that this really goes on and this really happens.
If people were all murdering each other at the rates that they're all raping each other, little kids, it would be out in the newspapers every day, wouldn't it?
Children come forward and start talking, the fear of what's going to happen when this abuse is publicized. I mean, that's what I deal with daily, all the time, is what's going to happen when we have to deal with the community.
Packed up.
You know, we lived in this white bread fairy tale existence. You know, we lived in a great town with great schools. You know, we both had good jobs, with good kids. Just
like everyone else next door.
Yeah, I really don't think that I would have never predicted it. It was shocking. It was shocking. Daniel doesn't really know anything other than his father is in prison.
How did you learn what happened?
My sister told me that this is what, you know, one of the boys had said, that this happened.
Was it with both of them?
One weekend and one the next. Mm-hmm. And that was it. And it had happened 6 months prior. And Bill said this, you know, this was wrong. We can't do this again. He didn't know what to do, and he knew that he needed counseling. But the problem is that he would have been arrested right then. I wish he had told me right then, so things may have had a different outcome. He was afraid that if he had told me also that I would just immediately leave him. So, you know, it just became a nightmare from them.
What is the process for you? Take it from like the moment that you discover what happens with that news.
It was
What did
the
you go
most
through?
horrible moment of my life. I thought, oh my God, this just couldn't have happened. Literally, it just ripped the family apart. It's horrific. We were down here for close to a year before Bill came down here, and the boys, you know, we always had the kids playing, and they rode bikes together and did all kinds of things. And one day, as soon as a mother decided that she needed everybody in the school to find out, and brought a flyer to the school of my husband, it was like a bomb went off. Daniel, he's been ostracized from virtually everybody. And he's just heartbroken. And in fact, I carry around a letter that he wrote that I found, and it was in his book bag, and it's so sad, about a little bird who is stupid. And the bird is so stupid that he tries to fly south, and he keeps flying in circles, and then eventually falls in the ocean and thinks he's drowning, but because he's so stupid, he doesn't realize he's in a foot of water, and this bird's name is Daniel. I just... It was horrible. You know, he's such a good, sweet child. And he's done nothing.
I think he was there because he wanted to know what she was going to say and what the boys were going to say.
Oh, yeah. I ran around the corner and he was lurking right there, listening to every single word that was being said.
So when I looked over there, I looked at you guys when he came out of the door, because that's what he was doing. So I think he wanted to know what his wife, ex-wife, thought, what his boys might say. That's the reason he was there.
He refuses to go into treatment and he's going to be a reoffender.
Right when he said this has been blown out of proportion, this has been so blown out of proportion, I don't want to do it anymore. When he said that statement, the very first.
Yeah, and
that's denial.
A guy who's recalcitrant and really remorseful and wants to make amends, wants to talk about it even more.
Yep. If he would have looked at the big picture before he did what he did, he would have known that he ruined his family's life, kids, and everything else. What he did. He didn't look at that. He did what he did, and to hell with everybody else.
We, as human beings, are capable of huge self-deception. We can deceive ourselves into thinking things are right or wrong, and not believing that something is heinous or wrong when it is. The tools used in this are justification. I could even probably give you a chapter and verse in the Bible where I might have justified a relationship as such that I was in. We tend to take something that's this big and make it look this big with our tunnel vision, minimization. We minimize things. I molested a relative. I'm convicted of lewd molestation, which is inappropriately touching, fondling the genital areas, breasts of a minor child as a relative.
What happened to you and your relationship with your family once that came out?
Well, the whole family broke up. We're still in the process of divorce after 5 years. My other children were taken into DHS custody and went through the foster care system. The whole family was victimized and hurt tremendously by it. I mean, it's like a rippling effect. You drop a stone in the water, the ripples spread. All those you love most are hurt the most.
It never goes away. And so the trauma lasts for a lifetime. There's no end to it. You know, they learn how to deal with it. They learn how to live and be survivors and be successful. But you can't take away what's something that happens.
I guess that's true with everyone involved, offender, victim, and family members.
And family
No
members.
one ever forgets it. And no one is left without being impacted and hurt.
When you're the first kid in your neighborhood that knows about sex, that's going to change the way your peers perceive you and the kind of people that you're going to date and the kind of experiences you're going to have. It sets you on a path apart from your peers. I can't imagine a 10-year-old girl sitting around the campfire at Girl Scouts talking about, stories of first kisses when they've been having intercourse for 3 or 4 years.
You know, I was thinking about it this morning, just lying there kind of thinking about talking about it today, and I'm thinking, you know, it's amazing that I can even get up and deal with my life now. I mean, I've just come such a long way, and I think we have to, right? Otherwise we'd be dead.
If we're talking about in an incestuous family, that this is an individual, maybe it's your parent who is supposed to love, trust, and protect you, and they have been the ones that have betrayed you, your trust, then absolutely the effects for children, particularly if they've never disclosed, can be absolutely long-term. Because a lot of these children, we know, they don't disclose. They don't disclose until adulthood. And typically by that time, they've learned a lot of lessons in that family. You don't trust, you don't trust, people who love you hurt you. And so these children typically will suffer from a lot of long-term effects, some of them being post-traumatic stress disorder, some of them being hypervigilance, being unable to bond and trust with people because of the fact that if these people love me and trust me, or they tell me they do, and they're the ones that hurt me, then anybody can hurt me.
Kelly talked about the women who often it seem like they ignore it, but maybe they were molested, and that's just, they grew up in that setting where that's just kind of the way it goes.
They think they protected their children by telling someone and reporting that person, and then their children are molested again by the next boyfriend or the next live-in or the next uncle or whomever, and they go and tell law enforcement, and that person's arrested, and then the child's reoffended again. And then they don't understand why their children are removed for failure to protect.
I did all of the suicide consults at the local hospital. The young women that was in there, most of them, at least 90% of them, had been victims of childhood sexual abuse. The ones that had children, many times their own children were victims. They did not protect their own children. They didn't know how.
One of the things that I carry with me from the abuse is that I don't want anybody wanting anything from me because I don't feel like I have it to give. Because I was everything, it was like it was taken away from me, and I just feel just spent.
Say you got 3 girls. This may be the most verbal, exciting, energetic child, and the offender targets that child specifically for the offense because he is jealous. And so you have a child that has all of those great qualities. By the time the offender gets through with them, they're the child that has the low self-esteem and these kinds of things because the offender targeted them specifically because of their good qualities.
Every day I would wake up and go, I'm a loser. I'm a loser, and I'm so not. But I really believed I was because he filled my head. And for what he did, made me believe that I was nothing, that I was just nothing.
It's an ongoing battle with, I'm good enough. I know I'm good enough. I just know I am. Why don't I feel like that?
One of the most traumatic things out of everything that happened to me, when I look back on what's affected me and impacted me the most, was not the actual abuse. It was that they didn't believe me. And so I've led my whole entire life that no one believes me and that I'm just this fraud, nothing I say matters. And I think that's probably the worst feeling that a person can have growing up with and having that instilled as their basic backbone belief about themselves.
I've done a lot of work to heal, but you know, it stays with you every day.
So what are your impressions so far? I mean, you've been with us for almost a week, 4 days. Did the problem expose itself any differently to you than what you've experienced?
I don't feel, me personally, I don't feel sorry for the perpetrators. They brought that on themselves. I really look at it a little different about the family members or the children or something like that. It's just like they even though they weren't involved in it firsthand, it kind of, the stigma stays with them also, and that's not right, I don't think.
Hey, Mr. Bernard, how are you?
I'm doing good. How you doing?
I'm doing fine. We're supposed to meet Mr. Day here.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
Okay, well, come on in. Wait for him inside.
Okay.
Councilman Rosado, how are you? Okay, I'm doing some extra work today. How you doing?
Mickey?
Yeah, Mickey Rosado. Pleasure to meet you. And
My
you
pleasure. Edward Blackoff.
Mr. Blackoff, welcome to our city.
Thank you.
Okay, and what are we doing today?
We're interviewing for a documentary.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, welcome. Well, excuse my attire. I'm relaxed. It's Sunday.
The man's at work. So you're on the council here?
I'm on the city council.
We're doing a documentary on how to find better ways to protect the children from sexual molestation.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I co-sponsor that with Mr. Day. I think we're trendsetting here in Cape Coral. We're trying to take this down to a larger level with the state legislation, try to get a passage where it's blanketed throughout the state of Florida.
I'm not a social worker. I'm not a counselor. My job is to protect people. I thank God that this council passed the ordinance and the resolutions that I put forward, because I think they're a good thing for the community. I think it has to get done. I just wish it would be a national thing.
How do you put a value on the safety of kids? You don't.
Well, we're just really questioning the whole how far is safe, and is that even really safe? I mean, who decided this law? Why? When so much of the offending is happening in the home, as opposed to out of the home and the random, predator, that's like maybe 5% of the problem. So
I understand that, but 5% is 5%. So if you can shield that 5% and protect it, then
is it
that's
really
a good
doing
answer.
that, or is it causing them to start to be more transient?
In establishing the boundaries, the 2,500-foot boundaries, what you're trying to do is keep that person away from that constant familiarity in those areas where children are known to congregate, such as athletic fields, schools, playgrounds, that type of activity.
And in fact, the few studies that have been done have not been able to determine that there's a relationship between where sex offenders live and how often or whether or not they recidivate.
The doctrine that we've taken in the city is that we're not going to tolerate these type of individuals in our city. You're going to be stigmatized, if you may say, forever if you make this mistake. So the question is prevention here. The question is, how do we prevent people from getting into these situations?
Do you have any thoughts on how to prevent the father from molesting his children?
That happened in my family, okay? And you can't prevent that. What's going to happen is going to happen. And I tell you, it's happening in my family today. I'm a testimony of it. I just had about every effect in my own personal life. The best thing you can do is to raise conscience of people, and you can't twist somebody's arm.
Well, how can we do that in the family? That's
How do
the
you
big
do that
question.
in the family? Is by providing basically an outreach effort. The more education people have, the better they are. It's a constant roll.
Yeah.
It's a constant roll of punches. You got to keep educating people. The best thing you can do is just to prevent people from getting into that situation.
So, Mickey, what are you guys doing in your family to deal with that issue?
Oh boy, I think we faced some very hard decisions, and as a matter of fact, I'm going through that crossroads as I speak right now.
Yeah.
As an individual, how I'm dealing with it is basically, just get on my knees, with my wife and pray to God that, you know, they guide us the right way. As a man of faith, that's all you can do.
They're really stigmatizing, trying to stamp the scarlet letter on people. We're getting vigilanteism left and right, and it's creating a lot of problems rather than solving them. And of course, as I said, no new cases are really coming forward. Nobody's going to ask for help. You can't really ask for help the way they've got the system rigged. It's like the old drug laws in the 50s. If you were a heroin addict and you went to the police, they just locked you up for 20 years. Well, you can't come to me and say, I have a problem, I need help, I'm molesting my child. I have to turn you in. There's no confidentiality in this business. And I understand that we do need the law enforcement machine. We need the courts. We need lots of things to work on this problem, don't get me wrong. But when the answer is law enforcement only, then we're not going to have much of a chance to get people to come forward. You're automatically pretty much given a prison sentence these days. They're not invested in sending you to counseling. Now, if you serve your 5, 10, 20 years, then they'll let you out. And you may get sent to some counseling at that point. But that's pretty much a dismal picture as far as offering hope to troubled families. So it's no surprise that nobody reports.
And here's my card, anything you need, this is your office here. You know, this is the office of the people. And like I told you, what I told you was personal, you know, my personal. And it's like I said, we need to talk about it because it's healthy for you, you know?
That's what we're doing.
Yes. Well, keep me in the touch, and if I affected somebody's life, I hope I was valuable to that, and I appreciate your words of kindness.
And I know it shows. It shows that
Thank you.
You're speaking from your heart.
Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Thank you. Okay, enjoy the rest of the afternoon, okay?
Thanks.
Anything I can do for you guys, let me know.
I will.
Okay.
I'm not quite clear personally what's magic about 2,000 feet that's not magic about 10 feet that's more magic or less magic than 2,005 feet. I mean, if you were across the street.
On that particular one about the 1,000 feet rule from schools and daycare centers or 2,500 feet from schools and daycare centers, I'm not a big advocate of that. You know, I don't see where it shows an impact.
If you send everyone out of a centralized location to a rural location, it's a little more difficult, in my opinion, to watch them.
It just means getting people to shut up because it appears as though something is happening. And that's...
Meanwhile, nothing's happening. If anything, I'm seeing that it's making the problem worse.
So in a funny way, you have less control.
That's my personal opinion, but yes.
What about the aspect of it that most of these offenders of children, it occurs in someone's home, usually someone where everybody knows everyone?
Yes.
So it would further mean that the residency restrictions don't deal with that either.
No, sir, they do not.
Our main responsibility here in the unit is to just monitor. We usually knock on the door, they answer, we can verify that they live there. If they don't answer or if they're not home, we don't verify them and we come back at a later date.
When this unit was started 2.5 years ago, there was 45 arrests, 45 warrants of individuals that weren't living where they were supposed to be living. These guys, when they go out and they verify them monthly, they determine within at least 30 days whether or not that person's where they're supposed to be and a warrant is being issued. And that warrant, goes out through the United States. So if that individual gets stopped by any other law enforcement officer in the United States, they're going to jail.
Yeah, okay, I'll go do a warrant and he might get picked up or he or she might get picked up a few months down the road. But that's a few months that we had no idea where he was at.
That's the ultimate goal, is to know where these individuals are at. I don't know the actual statistics, but there are quite a few sex offenders, thousands of unregistered sex offenders that we don't know where they're at in the United States.
They are laws that sound good in theory. Intuitively, they sound like they make sense. But in actuality, there's no research evidence to support that they work.
seen at home today. Of course, when you talk to them, they're all, you know, unjustly accused.
Right.
They're not guilty. Or they just pled guilty to it because it made their life easier.
Right.
Do you want to give us a little information about what your life is like?
It's hell. It's a living hell. I get threatened every day. My life gets threatened on the line every day. Every day. And I'm not under a lot of these laws. I'm under the Green Act. And they just keep throwing all the sex offenders. They all look at us as monsters. We're not all monsters. I don't know what else to tell you. I'm just really kind of disgusted about a lot of things. It's really depressing. And I have contemplated suicide because it's really, really bad. It's hell. My dad, he can't go to a bar or anywhere without saying, oh, there's a guy that did this and did that. You know, it's really funny that how people can judge a person and don't know a thing about the person.
So it washed off and washes off on your father.
Bad.
What about the rest of your family?
My mother's dead. My brother don't want nothing to do with me.
Uh-huh. And did you offend with someone in the family or outside the family?
It was, I was married to a ready-made family. I adopted these children.
Uh-huh.
And my wife wanted a divorce, and I didn't grant her one. So she went out and bid her way and trumped up a bunch of lies. I got it all in paperwork.
So are you saying that you didn't offend?
I didn't do anything.
And how did you get adjudicated?
Well, I was stupid of the law at that time. It was back in the 80s, and I was very naive of the law. And if I knew what I know now, back then, I would have took a different avenue.
So you took a plea?
Yeah.
And how much time did you serve?
Well, I got 10 years on that. I did 12 years Department of Corrections, off and on. I did, you know, violation probation and back and forth.
Uh-huh.
You still having the power for the neighbors next door?
Yes, sir.
All right, I passed that information on.
This is really sad, and I got all this on tape. What's really sad is they could have cocaine parties and all kinds of stuff next door, smoke pot, drink beer in front of them children. Leave them there by themselves, and here they are judging me. I don't understand that.
He said it's getting a little rough for him. He didn't really mention that he was thinking about reoffending, but he was actually kind of contemplating that, you know, is my life worth living and stuff like that.
Anybody who's been involved with sexual offenders has heard it many times, but I'm not guilty. My wife decided she wanted a divorce. Most everybody don't speak out because we just as soon let it die and let it rest rather than stir the pot.
Hi. This is Chief Ferrante. Hello, I'm Velvet Blackoff. Come on in.
Charlie, Ferrante.
May I?
Sure. Bill Myers. Nice to meet you.
Good afternoon, Nicholas.
How you doing, Nicholas? Have a seat.
Thank you.
Has everything been to your liking? You've been taking all over? Everything's been fine?
Oh, yeah.
Everybody's getting everything you need?
Very nice.
Not only nice and helpful, but super competent.
Good.
You run a good show. Very good.
We're
Very
doing
good.
this documentary, trying to get all aspects of it, laws that are working, laws that aren't. How do you feel about it?
Well, when I was a
News.
kid, I must have been oblivious to it. If it was happening, nobody spoke about it.
I know.
Back then, everybody used to get hit with a belt. And you'd be swimming in the pool, and everybody had welts all over their back. But, you know, it was like no big deal. Everybody get hit with a belt in my neighborhood. But nobody spoke about it. You know, it was just accepted. And in my mind, I'm wondering if something like this was going on.
Exactly.
Was that something that was never spoken about, and you just never knew about it? My theory right now is I feel that juveniles are our biggest investment. They're like a tree. You can get them to grow straighter. They're not putting a lot of money into juveniles. They're not putting a lot of counseling into the kids. I think your future is there and you could save them. I think you're going to reap the benefit out of a kid more than an adult that possibly through his characteristics and all the years of his learned trait, may or may not change. But with all that's out today, the knowledge we have today, I'm surprised that there is not more funds out there. I've always said that once a child has been molested, raped, or penetrated, whichever way you want to call it, that it doesn't stop at the trial and the sentencing. That child is a victim the rest of their life.
Yeah.
And I've said that from day one.
And those are the people who go on 50% of the time to become molesters themselves.
Have any hooks with HBO at all? No
Yeah,
hooks?
I have some ins,
Yeah, we do.
but, you know, it's never a guarantee.
Can you get your hands on a Soprano shirt in a lodge?
I was teaching preschool special ed in South Central LA, and I was an adopted child, and our oldest child, our only child at that point, was 7, 8, somewhere in there. And I had this one child in my class who was a gem. And I thought, well, you know, maybe my wife and I can bring someone into our family because we haven't been able to have another baby. He did end up coming into our house, seemingly out of the blue. I can't think of just another night that I was tucking him into bed. He looked up at me and he said, Mrs. I almost said her name. She put a banana in my butt. And I said, what did you say? I couldn't understand where he came up with this. It seemed so random. And it seemed surreal, seemed funny. You know, you just don't hear those things from kids. And then he said it again, she put a banana in my butt. Throughout the next 3 weeks from that first moment when he had told me that, he began to disclose some very graphic and disturbing things. Everything from being made to sit on this man's lap while watching cartoons. He would say, I was naked. I had no clothes on. And I sat on this man's lap. He gave the guy's name. And I knew what that meant. It hurt me to know that this child that I was going to call my son had endured all of these sick things. We have other concerns. He'll play with his toys a certain way, inappropriate ways. He'll take the clothing off of his action figures, the big ones, and I've caught him kissing the private areas of his toys, making his toys reenact various things, and it's tough to say to him, you know, it's not the way we should do things. It's very tough to know how to guide him to the way that I guess would be acceptable or, you know, not inappropriate. I understand that most people who were abused end up in one way or another acting out, and I don't want that for him. We're trying to give him the best real, true love that we can. And now we've been blessed to have 2 more children of our own. After the adoption was final, my wife got pregnant, so now we have 4 boys, and 2 of them are under the age of 1.5 years. And we want so much for him to have a wonderful relationship with his baby brothers, but at the same time, we have to watch him. He asks things like, can I watch the baby get his diaper changed? Can I touch his pee-pee? You know, and I don't know how to move forward and let him explore the full realm of being a big brother with his infant brothers that he can, without having to constantly watch and just be sure that he doesn't do something to them. So, I don't know what the next step is other than continue to love him, continue to watch, continue to redirect his behaviors.
Do you think if you had more information when you started the process to adopt him, that you would have continued?
It seems like the most common thing that I hear about kids in foster care is they've been abused, physically, sexually, and to the extreme that things that he had told me, I can't imagine what these thousands of other kids are going through. knowing the stress and the difficulties we've had, it's got to be worth it. It's got to be worth it that he's not in that anymore. Yeah, we would have done it again. I mean, I remember after we made the reports and he was in our home as they placed him as a foster child, but it was easier because I had the pre-existing relationship as his teacher. They asked us, do you still want to proceed? And well, yeah, he calls us mom and dad now. How can you kick a kid out? What are we gonna do, send him to another place this is gonna happen? That's awful. I wish we had the ability to bring in more kids.
Nobody wants to talk. Nobody wants to get on the record or being asked an embarrassing question. They're covering their asses all the time. So that's what she said. I said, what's the reason? She said, well, the reason is they don't want to participate. I said, any particular reason why? She said, yeah, well, they don't want to participate.
That's the reason.
That's the reason.
Well, how's that for closed lips?
Really is.
It's frustrating, isn't it?
I want information. I want to know how it works so that we can put together a body of information to better understand incest, which is essentially this subject.
I pled guilty to a charge of lewd lascivious molestation on an 8-year-old child. I asked her if she didn't mind helping me clean the room up and stuff. And she went in there just nonchalantly and just, she sat on the bed, and that's when I took advantage of her, Here I am, touching her, orally molesting her, and she felt uncomfortable. And she said that she needed to go to the bathroom, and she went to the bathroom. I sat there and I wanted to throw up because I knew that she knew that this was not right.
Did I hear that you're married? How long have you been married?
Me and my wife were married on January 22nd last year.
His partner came to group for a time to learn of his safety plans, those kinds of things, to keep their child safe before the child was born.
Yeah, and she knows of my situation. She we talk about it just about every night or every other night, and different things.
Is there any concern on your part about violating your own daughter?
No, I'm not worried because that's part of me, and I sit back and think every day, I do not want to hurt somebody else because I watched a videotaping of the victim, the 8-year-old victim, and seeing how she was afraid of me. She was a friend. I was going into the meeting. She drew a bow. Never. That's what made me bleed. Because I didn't do it anymore.
Here we are in Oklahoma.
Oklahoma is okay.
Staying this way. Okay, I'm getting used to how. We got 13 miles to go still.
You can say hi to the camera, Holly. You can tell them who you are.
My name is Holly Chandler.
New member of the crew.
Yes, I'm a member of the crew, traveling around Oklahoma.
And Oklahoma is okay.
Yeah, so
Yes.
far so good.
That's it, good.
So we started to talk about that nobody in political office wants to talk.
Right. They seem not to want to talk. They don't. I think it might be uncomfortable for them, not wanting to talk about it, not wanting to deal with it. But eventually it's going to have to be dealt with.
When you say not want to talk about it and not want to deal with it, what are you really referring to?
I'm really referring to incest. It seems like we have plenty of people that want to talk about the stranger danger, but we don't have too many people that want to deal with what's going on within the homes.
I look at the sexual abuse not as craziness or sickness, but faulty learning.
You're dealing with an offender. Typically, he's going to be somebody who oftentimes was molested himself.
They're not born a sex offender. They're not born an incest father. It's how they try to get their needs met in a sexual way.
Some adults sexualize that child. Instead of seeing the child as a person, they see the child as an object and say there's some underwear, there's body parts. And to have those sexual thoughts, what I call deviant sexual thoughts, and build them into fantasies, oftentimes masturbating to those thoughts and then act them out.
I had these images, vivid images, and I would sit and I would think about these things and play it out in my own head. It says, I put myself in that spot, and it was gross.
We're finding out it is a choice.
How does a person make that sort of choice?
We were talking about it last night.
How they make that choice.
I told myself I wasn't going to do this, and I did it. And it was hard for me to live with the first week or so. And then after doing it so many times over several months, it was just like my conscience became seared.
I find that some of the basis is the families they come from. You know, if he was offended as a child at home.
My dad was not ever sexually abusive, but he was verbally abusive, name-calling, constantly a lot of physical slapping around, this type of thing.
It comes, yes, from a buildup, from a lack of love, from a lack of attention, from a lack, if your mother couldn't give you the care that you needed, maybe because your father is beating her up, or because she has to work 2 jobs and is dumping you in the grandmother's room who isn't taking good care, or whatever the reasons are. There's all kinds of reasons, or that she's just plain postpartum depressed, which 1/3 of the new mothers are. If you don't get that good kind of care in the early time, you don't trust anybody. The further back in history you go, and according to my book, The History of Childhood, the further back in history you go, the worse the child rearing is.
It seems like incest has a long tradition.
Oh, yeah.
Not just here, but in the world. And
if you read the Bible, I mean, there was incestuous relationships in the Bible.
Well, I got all kinds of stuff from the Middle Ages of people who were in the monasteries saying that the boys were constantly raped there.
Does anyone ever say, hey, maybe it's a natural thing? Maybe it's the way...
My offenders tell me that all the time. They tell me, if I was living in another country, in another world, I could be doing this and nobody would say anything.
Well, I guess they can move.
That's what I've told them, go over there.
Were there ever any incest-free societies?
No.
Never?
Never.
I think that's the part that people have the most difficulty understanding. How you can know it's wrong, know that you oughtn't to do it, feel that way, and yet still do it.
Best way I know how to explain that is basically you're very selfish and you want what you want, and to a large degree you're going to do it. You're not willing to tell yourself, no, stop.
Even though you know that child is going to be damaged.
But that's just it though. You get in the habit of the denial of, it's like with me, I minimized my experiences when I was abused. And so I looked at it that child, it's not really going to affect them, because I denied how the molestation and abuse that I had received affected me and my choices that I made every day. The 3rd time I was molested, by that time I couldn't talk to nobody, I couldn't trust nobody. And so, I mean, because of my choice not to, it's put me where I'm at today, because I didn't deal with my issues then when I should have.
What about them? What sign did you see that said to you, this is a real possibility?
Just the fact that they would look up to me. Like I said, they looked at me as, hey, the respectable guy on the block, so to speak.
Was the same thing true of you?
Oh yeah, I do things for them, and I groom them into telling them it was okay. So yeah, they were looking up to me.
Grooming is a person manipulating by doing nice things for a particular person to make that person willing, whether it's conscious or not, to make that person willing to do things with them. That is by doing things for that person.
If you groom them enough, you can get anything you want.
And is that true with you, James?
You look for vulnerabilities, sure. That's what, I'll personalize it. I look for vulnerabilities. A lot of times it's the acceptance level. Just someone like spending time with them, being sympathetic to listen to them, their needs or their wants, you know. And it's an act. It's an act because I had no care or concern for them whatsoever. I was playing the game, and to me, that's all it was. And I'd look for anything like grooming, monetary gifts, it doesn't matter. You just gotta find a way in. I'd be looking for the man that's Mr. Popular, that's letting my kids get by with murder. Now that's the guy setting the kids up.
Well, actually, you look at the parents. Should the children be seen and not heard? Okay? Kids, go to the other room. You know, you start seeing that a lot, and you're like, okay. I mean, those kids can talk to their parents until they're blue in the face. And the parent's gonna be saying, go get me another beer. Go do your chores. Do your homework. Just get out of my face. And then you have a rejected child, and
That child's extremely vulnerable.
yeah.
So you do look for certain things.
A predator's gonna look for a submissive woman with children. And if she's submissive, look out.
But one thing you've got to do as a parent is you have to have a talk with your children. And you have to tell them. And if your children talk, you have to believe them. But you don't tell your children don't talk to strangers, because all you've got to do as a stranger is, I'll tell you my name if you'll tell me yours, and you're not strangers anymore. But you tell your child, tell when it happens. I don't care who it is. Tell when it's happened. As soon as you feel safe, tell. And don't just tell one person. Tell a lot of people, and tell it a lot. And tell people till it stops. That's what you tell your children, and that takes their power away.
One of the people I offended reported it to their teacher at school.
And the school did what?
They called DHS and the sheriff's office, and DHS took the kids, and then when I went to pick the kids up from school, they served me with a warrant to appear in court the next day for a show cause hearing.
We're better off than we were 10 years ago with them, because we have taught victims to come forward and report them. We do have these containment teams that get together about the offender, what to do with the offender. We are monitoring them better than we did 10 years ago. We have more research about offenders to be able to treat them better, to learn how to treat them more than what we did 10 years ago.
As we get started, what I'd like to do is go around the room and have everybody that's in the meeting today introduce themselves. With the new containment model, team, so on and so forth, we have better control of them, and we catch them like John was saying with the polygraph and the treatment providers. We usually head it off before it gets there.
How does this sort of meeting on a regular basis help you do your job?
it just brings everybody to the table and says, yeah, he is registering. A lot of times when we bring up something, DHS may be able to say, hey, we went out to that house and they have treatment plans and follow-up plans. CASA does the same thing. They're going into houses and they're able to say, we saw drugs in those houses, or we saw a kid over there the other day. The police officers driving the community and they may be able to say, we saw a kid over at that house the other day, and it alerts us that we need to go in and do another home visit or to check that situation out. And so it just brings communication between everybody to just sit down for an hour or two once a month and talk about, do we need to look closer at this one individual, and gives us a chance to communicate back and forth.
We've been able to be very proactive in some of these cases. Like one recently, in the polygraph, we discovered that he had moved in with a woman who has children living there. And we were able to, of course, immediately stop that situation.
Once an offender goes into treatment, he has to face a polygraph every 6 months, whether he's reoffended or not. And most of the offenders says, I would be a fool, to reoffend while I have the polygraph monitoring me. And then I have a probation officer that comes by my house all the time and checks. And then I'm sitting in a group of offenders every week that can detect whether I would be getting ready to reoffend. So with all those components together is, I think, what keeps them from offending. And plus the interventions they learn. They can start identifying when the urges start and what to do with it. Before, they didn't know what to do except offend. There is a law, House Bill 2552 in the state of Oklahoma, says if you're a registered sex offender, it is required for you to be in sex offender specific treatment. But right now, there is no financial help out there anywhere to help make this happen. Does it need to happen? Oh yeah. Oh yeah. But there's no financial help. The offender can't pay for the treatment. The state gets chicken feed, and out here throwing it to the providers. The state of Oklahoma gives $60,000 to treat sex offenders in Oklahoma. I have 450.
We'll get somebody. They'll come a politician who will be a hero or a champion for children, and we will fight for her.
What's the number?
1901.
Oh, there's 1901 right there.
Northwest parking lot, 2 double doors.
My house is kind of cramped, but I've got my dialysis equipment. I do a home dialysis, and this is my front room. And how you want to set up, just let me know and I'll see what I can do. Come on. That's Zazzy, my kitty cat. Hi, Zazzy. When I was about 10 years old, I was attacked, brutally beaten and raped by a so-called friend. This person who beat and raped me happened to be in the same school with me. And he lived down the street. He was like 5 years older than me, twice my size at the time. Big, heavy-set guy. He should have been in high school, but he was put back several years, and so I remember my 5th grade teacher. I came to school that week after he had beat me, raped me, and she was crying. She said that, I know something's happened to you. And she said, could you tell me? She said, I'm a grandmother and a mother. She says, I've got kids at home. She says, I listen.
And I looked at her, and I just looked at the floor, and I started crying, and I said, I can't say. And she said, why don't you want to tell me? And I think to myself, I said, man, I was thinking to myself, if I told you, it might get back to him. And the man that did this to me is right across the hallway in the other room. If he finds out that I told off him, he'll kill me. I felt like I was worthless. And so I didn't say a word to her. And my biological dad, he knew something was going on, but he couldn't place it. He says, what's wrong with you? I'd see him once a year during the summertime. And I didn't have enough guts, bravery to tell him. And he ended up going to his grave, never knowing what happened to me.
Nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to, maybe we can talk about it, but what do we do about it? You know, laws need to be changed.
The children need our support. They need to be given help and treatment. Their families need help. Hope needs to be offered to them so they're willing to talk about what happened. If the children feel responsible for the demise of their families, they're never going to cooperate. And that's how I got started in this business. Actually, I was hired to go into the homes of sexually abusive families and try to prevent the children from recanting the allegations. Because, as I said, 50% of the kids take back their stories once they realize what's going to happen to their parents. It was the children that talked me into creating services for their fathers and their stepfathers.
The incest father is probably the one that is less likely to reoffend if he stays within that family unit.
As a victim advocate, I believe strongly in sex offender treatment.
When I came in here to group, it had changed everything. And it's helped me out a lot and things like that.
How's it helped?
It has helped me to open myself up and understand what I did wrong. And I'm trying to learn from it.
What's this program about?
No more victims!
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
This isn't just about sexual offending. This is about who they are in their life, about every relationship that they have.
But if they know and can believe, and which I do believe, they made a full choice of what they did, then they can take responsibility and accountability, and they also feel like there's a hope that they can stop.
Treatment works. What we know is that these people, we believe that these people can change.
What is your life like now, Lorraine?
My life right now is a lot better than it ever was before I got into the treatment program. I feel comfortable within my own skin as compared to what it was back then. I wasn't comfortable with me at all. I felt like dirt.
We want them to be watched. We want them to be on probation. We want them to be going into treatment every week. We want them looked at. We want to know who they are in the community.
If you have an offender that is thinking about acting out, having sexual deviant fantasies or arousal towards your child, who's he going to call? If he calls the police and says, I'm thinking about, what's going to happen, for one thing, they can't do anything because he hasn't committed a crime. For the next thing, what he's done is he set himself up as a sex offender. So what's going to happen to them? DHS is going to be called in. They're going to be investigating. Have you done anything? They're going to be talking to every person that is around this offender. So he's not going to tell anyone prior to offending. Sometimes the shame and the guilt is somewhat, and remorse is so much after that he will. Unfortunately, there's already been a child hurt.
I started offending when I was 11 years old.
When I was about 14.
I started at age 7.
14, 15 years old.
Having effective juvenile programs for kids that do act out sexually, that they have a place to go where they can learn how to deal with this and avoid the adult criminal justice system.
If you can take the adolescent offender, if you can take the child who's acting out inappropriately and work with those children in the adolescence, we would have greater effect, I believe, in less adult offending.
What kind of program would you like to see to get at the prevention of the first offense?
Okay. The first would be to teach positive human relationships in the school system.
There is a woman named Margaret Kint, a doctor, here in New York City, who has recently taught 30 classes in high school on parenting. And when they finish up, I read, she brought over a stack of papers that they wrote for her after she finished the teaching to them. And every one of them is so excited. They said, you know, by golly, now I can be a parent and be a good parent. I can pick up the good things that my mother and father did for me, but not repeat everything that they did bad. And that made me feel like I wasn't worth 2 cents.
Empower the schools to teach how to get along and how to take care of yourself.
How can we work within the school systems to protect children? How can we make sure that all of the people who could be involved with children at any point in their life, whether it's hospital personnel or daycare workers, are trained to recognize signs of sexual abuse, are trained to talk with children about safety, to talk with parents about safety?
There's kids that are being put on waiting lists that are sexually abused. What do you tell a young kid that's been abused? You know, wait for 6 weeks or for 8 weeks.
It's just like me. I said, if something would have been provided for me back then when I was 10, by the time I was 14, when I did my first victim, I probably would not have done it.
We want all victims of sexual abuse to come forward. We want children to get help. Most offenders are victims. You've heard that today. If you're intercepting or what we call breaking that cycle at the earliest possible age, like working with the juvenile offenders, then that's going to have a ripple effect on society in the positive way of preventing further victimizations. It's hard to prove that. And so maybe that's something that, you know, politicians can't grasp. But by treating victims today and allowing families to come forward and getting the help they need, that is going to protect our society 2 or 3 generations from now.
You can't work with just an offender without working with the community also. They have to have resources. Our communities are so scared of a sex offender living in the community that they really have no place to go. They have no support system.
My fear is that the laws now are going to make it impossible for these guys to make a good adjustment in the community. You know, the resident restrictions that are in Florida now for 1,000 feet, I believe were poor legislation.
It's really about educating the community because it's the community that is the one that really ultimately helps to shape how we do what we do. They're the ones that talk to their lawmakers about passing laws.
The more that we can bring them, reintegrate them back into the community and provide them with resources, the less likely they are to act out against other people again.
What kind of a guy is Mr. DeMouse?
DeMouse is a nice guy.
Nice guy, right?
dog's in the cage, and my wife's gonna take the dog out. Establish a parenting center in the neighborhood. They actually go out for the first year to your home for an hour a week. And they look and they see how things are going, and they talk to the mother and they give them help. And in these areas, Boulder he's got some good statistics he'll give you that shows the figures of child abuse going down, 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 down. They figured that they could establish a parenting center in every city in the United States for a children's tax of 0.1%, a sales tax of 0.1%.
Has the power to change it. They absolutely have the power to change it. When we shift our priorities and say, you know what, this is a priority, this is huge. We are tired of seeing children victimized and hurt because of sexual offending. So how are we going to fix it? And we look at all the ways.
The public education high school system and the home visiting programs and the parenting centers all can be started tomorrow.
Nobody should be a victim.
When incest happens in the family, childhood ends and survival begins, because that's what it's about for these children. It's about survival because they don't have a normal childhood anymore.
I hope that I can do something to help instead of hurt. I'm tired of hurt because I've been there.
It happens. It's not made up. Just like Sharon said, believe your children. It's happening as we are sitting here right now. So much abuse is taking place, and I would love to be able to stop it.
You can do away with child abuse here if you want to.
Everyone we speak to, everyone we meet, we must talk to. And everyone we talk to, we must ask them to talk about it as well. If we open it up so that it's not a secret, things will change. It's really up to us.